Hello, I'm Alex Hopkins with Connect and Collaborate, and this week we are talking with the Champions in Industry nominees. And I'm very excited for this event. It is our second annual awards luncheon that we are having to celebrate industries across Colorado. Last year we focused on collaboration in industry. This year we're focusing on champions in industry. And we have lots of industries to cover. We have 13 this year. In fact, we added nonprofit as a part of our industries to celebrate. But today I have with me Tracee Bentley. She is the executive director of the Colorado Petroleum Council, and they were nominated in the energy category along with Vital for Colorado and University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, better known as UCAR. So Tracee's got some good competition up against her, but I want to hear all about Colorado Petroleum Council and why they're a champion in our industry, in the energy industry. So Tracee, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Alex, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to even be a part of this group and to be up for this award, so thank you very much.
Yes, our pleasure. And we're so glad that you were nominated again. That is not something we see. It's not something we know anything about, really. We just get the nominations, and we're so excited to share that with you. And we've had several shows together, but if you don't mind talking a little bit about your background, just as a refresher for our guests.
Sure, no problem. I'm a fifth-generation Coloradan, very proud of that. My family, my dad's side of the family, farms in the San Luis Valley, so we're very, very much rural in nature. Prior to directing the Colorado Petroleum Council, I did some work as a private contract lobbyist, and certainly energy was one of my fields of focus. I also was Governor Hickenlooper's legislative director and senior advisor on energy and agriculture, and then API opened up the American Petroleum Institute opened up the Colorado office and asked me to lead it. So here I am.
Well, wonderful. It seems as though energy was already in your blood, being that fifth-generation Coloradan.
It absolutely was. You know, I remember being really little, and my grandparents and even my dad and uncles would talk about how energy was about 30% of the cost to running our farm. And at the time, I didn't really know what that meant. But, of course, as I got older, 30% of anything is a pretty significant amount of money. And so they were always really focused on, how affordable energy and how to conserve it and, where the best, most efficient use was. So it definitely was instilled in me as a young girl.
Yes, and I didn't realize how much Colorado focused on the energy industry, actually, until I moved here about eight years ago. But once I got this job, I saw exactly how much Colorado is just ingrained in the energy industry. That being said, let's talk a little bit about the Colorado Petroleum Council. Again, it's a chapter of the American Petroleum Institute. And so you guys have a unique role here in Colorado. Talk about that for me.
We do. Well, as you were alluding to earlier, Colorado is one of the top producing energy states in the entire country. We produce more oil and natural gas in the state of Colorado than some entire countries produce. So while the energy industry is certainly very, very important to Colorado, to our economy, to our energy supply, we are also very, very important when it comes to the national energy scene. Many states rely on our energy that comes from Colorado to help keep their prices affordable. So while we tend to focus just on Colorado, I like to remind people that we play a very important role nationally. So the Colorado Petroleum Council, we represent the oil and natural gas industry here in Colorado, and we represent everywhere from the smallest of the producer to the largest of the producer, to midstream, to the service folks, really every single facet of the oil and gas industry here in the state. Colorado Petroleum Council represents, and we do work at the state capitol, of course, making sure that our industry is encompassed by good policy. We do the same thing at the regulatory level. So when it comes to rulemakings, both at the state level and at the local level, we engage very closely with local governments when it comes to them and their rules surrounding their, at the local level. And we also do a lot of community outreach. We feel very strongly that we be very ingrained in the communities where we work. And so we spend a lot of time working and partnering with organizations who one may not think would be natural allies for the oil and gas industry. But what we found in Colorado is we are such a diverse state, and that we continue to change because a lot of people want to live in Colorado, and so we want our workforce and our actions to look like Colorado looks.
I think that's very well said, for sure. As much as we contribute to the national model, Colorado is a very unique state in many ways. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, I was going to say we're one of the fastest growing states in the country, and so the Colorado that I grew up in looks nothing like the Colorado that you and I live in today. But that's a good thing. As long as every industry, including my industry, continues to change and reflect what our state looks like, I think that we're in good shape.
I think so too. Well, Tracee, let's talk about why Colorado Petroleum Council was nominated, and your name is dropped in quite a bit, actually, throughout this nomination form. You mentioned specifically that you work with legislators across Colorado on energy policy and legislative reviews, bills, things like that, and I want to talk just a smidgen about 112 with you. We know that did not pass at this last election, which I'm glad that our community saw that and saw how much oil and gas contributes to Colorado's economy, right? And so I think the voters were very well informed on voting no on 112, and you played an integral part in that.
We did. We, in conjunction with Protect Colorado, helped fund and run the No on 112 campaign. And I got to tell you, I've never been more proud of Colorado in my life. Coloradans overwhelmingly saw the Proposition 112 for what it was, and it was a ban on oil and gas, and decided that was too extreme for Colorado, and recognized that our industry contributes $32 billion a year to Colorado's economy. We're 232,000 jobs, and these are Coloradans. These are their friends and neighbors, and their, little league coaches, and their community members. And so we were so pleased that Colorado overwhelmingly rejected 112.
Yes, we were pleased to see that as well. Also, you mentioned that you do a lot of community work, and that is something that I got a privilege to see at one of your events that you had, and we'll talk about that one a little bit later. But right now I want to bring up the Rocky Mountain Energy Forum, and so that is you hosted nearly 130 students, grades 6 through 10, from Rifle, Colorado, and beyond, to talk about opportunities in STEM fields. Again, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. And this was your 4th annual event that you had. So talk about that. Tell me how that event went and what your outcomes were for that.
Sure. Well, this is one of my favorite events that we do every year. As soon as we finish one, we get all excited and start planning the next one. And this year, we did move it to Rifle. Historically, we've done a couple in the Denver area, but I felt strongly that we give the opportunity to folks outside of the Denver metro area, and so we moved it to Rifle this past year, and the response that we received was overwhelming. We partnered with the community college up there, and they are wonderful partners, and we opened it up to grade school and middle school students from surrounding schools and said, come spend a day with us learning about STEM. This was twofold. Number one is because we are such an energy STEM heavy state that we want students to stay actively engaged and to have opportunities that perhaps they wouldn't otherwise have, to get a taste of STEM and what it means and the possibilities there. And certainly number two is the oil and natural gas industry. Our workforce depends heavily on STEM. And so engaging kids early on and getting them excited about math and science and technology with the hopes that one day they might want to come to work for the oil and gas industry, whether that's an engineer or a chemist. The possibilities are endless. So it was really twofold. And I can tell you, I think everybody who attended, and I think the teachers who helped and the students would certainly tell you, it was a huge success.
That sounds like a huge success, and I love that you moved it to Rifle outside of the Denver metro area. We do have so many programs here in the Denver metro area that focus on STEM. And so it's nice to see that you're going outside to the rural areas. Are there any plans for next year to continue in Rifle or perhaps go further or to other areas?
Absolutely. Well, we're so successful that now we're getting asked, can you do one in our area? So we've got requests from across the state to please come do one. And so my ultimate goal is to do several across the state so that there's an opportunity no matter what area you live in. But until that happens, we are definitely going to go back to Rifle, where we've already started working on what that one's going to look like in the spring. And then we'll probably do another one along the Front Range. But yes, we're definitely going back to Rifle. That community is fantastic.
Oh, wonderful. That's so good to hear. And again, that's in the spring, and you've already got some feelers in for what you're going to do next year. Is there any chance we can get a little snippet of what that looks like?
Well, I think this coming year, when we go back to Rifle, we noticed the kids what they were really gravitating towards, and that's really the hands-on building, putting pieces together, making things, charge electricity. And so I think we're really going to focus, while we certainly did some of that last time, I think we're going to pour a lot more resources into the actual hands-on, roll up your sleeves, and let's build. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, I love the hands-on stuff. That was one of my favorite things as a student when I was little. Anytime I got to really destroy anything or put my hands on anything, I was all about it.
Yes.
So continuing on with the community work that you guys were nominated for, another mention here in this nomination was the Pride and Energy event. And we mentioned this the last time you were on the show, but I got a chance to go to that Pride and Energy event. And that was one of my favorite Pride events of that week. Pride Week is one of my favorite weeks in Colorado, I'll be honest. It's a good time. It's just a fun time. But your Pride and Energy Week, you had this amazing panel of LGBTQ individuals and allies up on that panel, and you talked about having LGBTQ individuals in the energy industry, and it's a unique pairing to have. So if you don't mind talking a little bit about that event and what went on there.
Sure. I love this event. You're probably going to hear me say that a couple of times, but this is also one of my favorite events because it's the only one of its kind in the country. And the reason I felt strongly that we do this was for a couple of reasons. But number one, it really goes back to I really feel that the oil and natural gas industry, we should represent and look like what Colorado looks like. And Colorado, again, is so diverse, and we have a lot of LGBTQ folks in our communities and in our industry. And I want them to feel like they can be proud of that and talk about it and not have to hide it at work. The oil and natural gas industry, we're not the only industry, but we have a reputation for being very conservative, very male and on the older side. And I don't think that that's necessarily true here in Colorado. And so I wanted to create a forum where we could talk about what is it like to be LGBTQ in an industry that historically has been really conservative. And that what I found is so many of our employees are saying this conversation needed to happen a long time ago, but we're having it, and it's been embraced by so many of our companies and by the community that it's one of those events that once we started it, I didn't know if it was a conversation that folks wanted to have, and now people look forward to it every year. So again, this year over Pride Week, we're going to host, I think, what will be our 4th annual Pride and Energy.
Really? It's your 4th already?
I know. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and again, going back to that actual event that you had it at Trax, which was really exciting, and your panel was amazing. But one of my favorite questions that you asked on that panel was it harder to come out to your family as an LGBTQ individual, or was it harder to tell your friends and family that you work in the energy industry? And unique answers all around.
Absolutely. I think, Paul, we've not just in Colorado, in the country, but I'll talk about Colorado. I feel like we've let politics dominate the conversations, and certainly when it comes to energy, where you have folks who don't understand, who are misinformed about energy, and they tend to dominate the conversations. And so we've seen people who say, oh, geez, I'm so proud of what I do. I know what I do is important, not only to the state, but nationally, producing clean energy. But then they're afraid to talk about it for fear that some folks who are not energy friendly, will chastise them or make them feel bad about what they do. And so I put that question out there to say, to bring light to that, and liken it to what is it like to talk about being gay or lesbian or transgendered. And it surprised me at some of the answers. I think many of them said, oh, it was easier to come out than to tell people openly, I work for the oil and gas industry. And I think we're not going to change those conversations unless we're willing to be honest about it and open. And so that's why I asked the question.
And it was a great question. And again, I as you alluded to, a lot of the people said it was harder to to say that they worked in the energy industry than it was to come out to their families. And so I think we're making some really good moves here on being able to have that conversation with our families, whether it is an LGBTQ individual coming out, or if you're telling your friends that you work in the energy industry when your friends are assume the worst when you say that you work for the Petroleum Council or in oil and gas.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the most amazing things that came out of the No on 112 campaign, Alex, was we saw industry unite like we've never united before. And when all of the energy employees saw all of their colleagues rallying together and standing together, a sense of pride really rose from that. And you could see it happen almost immediately where they said, wait a minute, we're proud of what we do. And look at all of us. We're going to stand together and unite. And it was so powerful and so amazing to watch. I was so proud.
Aw, you just gave me goosebumps with that. Actually, it's really cool when you can get a company to come together and really be excited about their field and making things happen, like the No on 112. You also alluded a little bit at the beginning of our conversation about the Pride in Energy event. Oil and gas and the energy industry in general in Colorado tends to be male affiliated, straight males, white, the typical white male look in the energy industry. But one of the things that you had and do a wonderful job with is women in power, and that's women that are in the energy industry. And that is, I think, one of the biggest things that that you do that people should see. So tell me about the Women in Power event.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to say it again. This is also one of my favorite annual events, and it really goes back to industry needs to diversify, and in admitting it and then taking steps. It should have happened a while ago, but nonetheless, here we are. So when I took over as the director of the Petroleum Council, I said, well, if not us, then who? So let's start this conversation. And so one of the very first events that I put together was the Women in Power event, where we bring women leaders, not just from oil and gas, but women thought leaders from across the state. We bring them together and we had a conversation to say, okay, why is oil and gas, and really energy in general, the entire industry, why is it so heavily dominated by males? And what can we do to change that? How can we attract more women to oil and gas? And by the way, industry, in order to attract more women to oil and gas, we're probably going to have to make some changes, right, when it comes to paid leave and the flexibility for moms to do what they need to with their families and their kids. So those are really important conversations to have. And I can tell you that the outcome has been amazing. We've had so many women say, wow, well, first of all, I didn't know I could do all of these things in the oil and gas industry. I had no idea that the breadth of opportunities was so far and wide, and these jobs tend to pay really well. And as we're having more and more conversations, we're starting to see a lot more of that flexibility that I just spoke about come in. And a lot of people say, I would love to have I would love to go work in the oil and natural gas industry. So I think this year will be our fourth year of, again having this event, but the response has been overwhelming.
And that is phenomenal to hear that you have such a great response. I have a quote here from you. Actually, it's no secret that the oil and gas industry is old, male, and white. You were thrilled, or you said, I was thrilled when API said, you know what, if there's any state that could help change this, it's Colorado. And I think that could not speak better volumes for Colorado and how much we are a diverse state and want to include lots of people.
Absolutely. I am a firm believer that if you're going to wait around for somebody else to do it, you could have gotten a lot done while you were waiting. And so we just kind of took the bull by the horns and said, let's start this conversation. And I think since Colorado started Women in Power, I see several other states, whether they call it Women in Power, I don't know, but start to use us as a model and start to have those conversations, which is great to see.
That is wonderful to see, and hopefully across the board, across the country, we see lots more women in power in the energy industry, and of course other industries as well.
Absolutely. It makes me happy to think that one day soon I could walk into a board meeting and there will be at least 50% women, ideally more than 50%, but that makes me excited.
That does make me excited as well. I would love to see 100%. We'll get there one day, right?
Yes.
Well, Tracee, we have about 2.5 minutes left here. I want to ask you, what does Colorado Petroleum Council have on the horizon for 2019? What are we looking at?
Sure. Well, with the defeat of 112, one thing that came out of that is we have a lot more work to do when it comes to educating our lawmakers and our decision makers on oil and natural gas in the state of Colorado, and really getting down to the nitty gritty on how do we produce this energy, what are all of the rules that we have to abide by in order to get the energy. So we have a lot more educating to do. That's going to happen at the state capitol. That's going to happen at the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and it's certainly going to happen at the local level. So we are making plans right now on how best to do that and how do we get our message out and engage Colorado and help them understand that they should be proud of this industry and engage. If you have questions, let's figure out how to get those answered. So I make it sound really easy, but that is no small task, certainly. So the legislative session is going to be very key for us, and it's coming up very quickly. And then we're excited to come out hopefully successful of the legislative session and go right back into working in our communities and continuing to build relationships there. So I'm excited about 2019. I think it's going to be a good year for industry.
I think so too, and I do know that you're going to have a few battles, probably legislatively speaking. We've got a governor-elect, Jared Polis, now, who is definitely on board with the 100% renewables, and not that Colorado Petroleum Council is anti-renewables by any means, but we're going to have some time here with working with all of the above.
Well, that's exactly right. Colorado is so blessed to be in all of the above state. We're one of the only states who can boast we're a top energy producer, not just in oil and gas, but in wind and solar and hydro. And so we should embrace that and not choose one source over another because we don't have to. We're not like so many states who only have a couple. We have it all. And so messaging that to new lawmakers who have come in, perhaps not from Colorado, who don't understand the energy has truly been part of our fabric even before we were an actual state, and say, we are in all of the above. We can have it all. We don't have to choose. So let's make thoughtful policy decisions along those lines.
I love that. Thank you so much, Tracee. It's been a pleasure having you on. Once again, Tracee Bentley, the Executive Director of the Colorado Petroleum Council, who has been nominated for our Champions in Industry Awards in the energy category. Tracee, we wish you and the Colorado Petroleum Council the best of luck, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have a wonderful day.